Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am Scott Coleman, and I am joined on this Sunday evening by the one and only Stephen Tolbert. Our good friend and co-host Brad is currently flying towards the sun, otherwise known as Las Vegas, where it is 120 degrees. So Stephen is pinch hitting tonight on this Sunday show. Stephen, how are we doing?
What's up, Scott? Brad is off to watch Summer League basketball on the surface of the sun, like you said. Good to pinch hit on Sunday night. We beat the Sunday night curse, which is always nice. It's always nice to do these after a win. And honestly, man, after how Friday night went, I was really not looking forward to this show. Had the team not really bounced back the last 2 days the way they did. The last two wins, arguably the two biggest wins of the year to this point. It's always good to do these, and we got a lot to get to tonight.
We do. It is a very full show tonight. Before we jump in, we should say we are a very proud member of the Foul Territory network of shows. Those guys and gals do a great job Monday through Friday covering baseball for hours at a time, including, especially lately, as the trade deadline here gets closer. Ken Rosenthal has been on there. He was talking about the Braves the other day. So be sure to check out Foul Territory if you do not already. And a big thank you to everybody who has subscribed to Hammer Territory. We should be available wherever you find your podcasts. If for some reason we are not, please let us know. And Stephen, we're going to talk about that Phillies series that you just talked about a moment ago, but there's quite a bit of news and notes and All-Star game announcements that we need to get to. So we're going to jump right in. The Braves had 3 All-Stars announced on Sunday evening, and no real surprises, but if folks missed it, Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, and Marcell Ozuna are all heading to the All-Star game. Not necessarily any surprises here, Stephen. I know that those 3 were very likely headed there. I wanted to get your take. Was there any surprises or things that stood out to you?
No, the only thing I'm kind of waiting to see is if they announce Sale to start the game. I know that's a big deal for the guys who make the team on who starts. So that'll be interesting because he's definitely in the running for that. But it was kind of the 3 obvious guys. These 3 guys have pretty much led the way for the team for the first half. I don't know where the Braves would be without these 3 guys, honestly, given how for a lot of the year, these were the only 3 guys going. So yeah, a huge credit to them. Ronaldo being a starter for the first time in a few years, making the All-Star team. Ozuna has really kind of resurrected his career. Sale is healthy and, has turned back the clock about 5 years. So great. Obviously it's a big deal for players. It really means a lot to these guys. I'm not a huge All-Star guy. I don't think you are either. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but for the players, it is a big honor. It does mean a lot. So I'm really happy for these 3 guys. They absolutely deserve it. Those should be the 3 guys that are representing the Braves.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Ronaldo Lopez, it is the first time that he was selected as an All-Star. He leads all of Major League Baseball in ERA at 1.71. I mean, Stephen, let's say that one more time. Ronaldo Lopez, a reliever for the last couple of years, leads all of Major League Baseball in ERA, and it's not even that close. He has a comfortable lead over the field. Just talk about 2 fantastic offseason additions for Lopez and Chris Sale. Alex Anthopoulos really deserves a lot of credit for bolstering his rotation, especially in a time when free agent starting pitchers are getting unbelievable amounts of money in years on the market. The Braves are paying pennies for those 2 arms this season, and clearly it has worked out in spades. Having 2 All-Stars selected is really impressive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Boston, people remember Boston is covering Chris Sale's contract in 2024, so the Braves aren't paying him anything this year. And then Ronaldo Lopez deal was backloaded, so he's only making $4 million in 2024. So combined, the Braves are paying both guys about $4 million, which is usually how much you spend on a bench bat. Adam Duvall makes $3 million for context. So yeah, incredible job by Alex. Really all of his moves. I mean, you look at Kelnick. I don't know where the Braves would be without Kelnick. I mean, his big moves of the offseason have saved the Braves for the first half, considering how much their regular guys have struggled. So and Kelnick, I mean, honestly, Kelnick probably has an outside shot at getting an injury replacement or something. That the National League outfield situation is actually kind of a mess with a bunch of injuries. Acuna and Mookie are both out, and guys like Corbin Carroll have had down years. So, but yeah, a tremendous job by Alex. I mean, just world-class moves. This Chris Sale move, we talked about it before, but this Chris Sale move might go down as one of the greatest moves he's ever made. if Sale stays healthy. But yeah, a huge deal for these guys. And I didn't even realize it was Ronaldo's first. That makes sense, obviously, being a reliever. So awesome for him. Awesome for Ozuna bouncing back, Sale staying healthy, being a National League All-Star. Yeah, really happy for these guys.
And a real chance that Chris Sale might actually be able to start the game for the National League. He is lined up to pitch Monday and Saturday as things currently stand. And we know the Braves like to move around the rotation, so that is a little TBD at this point. But there's a real chance that he could start the All-Star game for the National League in a couple of, 10 days from now. Really, just what a bounce back for him. And I mean, Steven, if I told you during the darkest of days for the Marcell Ozuna experience in 2021 and 2022, I mean, was there any planet where you could have foreseen this bounce back and him getting not only an All-Star game nod, but a very deserved one?
No, yeah. I mean, if you had told me that in 2024 he'd be an all-star, I would just assume like he would be like, a Japanese league all-star or a Mexican league all-star. Like I would have not have guessed, Major League Baseball. Yeah, I've really never seen anything like it. Honestly, as far removed as he was from being even a competent major league player, and I think very, very close to just being straight up cut to coming all the way back to not only being good, but being truly elite. I mean, an elite level hitter now for a year plus. I've never seen anything like it. And, every single guy in that clubhouse loves Marcell. Brian Snicker loves Marcell. I mean, they just swear up and down by him as a teammate. So it's, I am happy for him. I know a lot of people will never root for Marcell because of the off field stuff that's happened to him. I totally get that. But I am happy for him because he clearly cares a lot. He's worked very hard to get back to being a good hitter, and he's really turned himself back into being a great hitter. So, and he deserves, I mean, on the field, he deserves to be an all-star. Like he's had an all-star level first half. So I'm happy for him that he got rewarded for being so consistently good for so long now.
Yeah, it really is just a testament to Marcell just getting back to what he does so well and performing at such a high level. One of the best hitters in the National League through the first, 3+ months of the season. Not necessarily a snub for the All-Star game, and we won't spend too much time on this because, frankly, there are always pitchers who pull out of the All-Star game at the last moment, and then others get added. You could make a pretty good case for Max Fried. You could make a case for Raisel Iglesias. I know there was a push, especially by the players, to get Jesse Chavez into the game, which was probably a long shot, to be fair. But nonetheless, Jesse is just such a beloved arm. So let's keep an eye on that for sure. It's a chance that one of those guys get added on. Stephen, I know we also had quite a bit of news and notes that we wanted to talk about, and then we're going to jump into the Phillies series. But there was a ton to get to. Generally, this time in the calendar for baseball, there's just not a whole lot going on other than the games. But there was a lot happening. And this first thing we're going to talk about is a couple of days old, but old friend Eddie Rosario is now back with the Atlanta Braves. He is currently in Gwinnett, although it would not be a shock if a roster move is made by the time some folks are listening to the show. Stephen, I know that Eddie is beloved in the city for obvious reasons for what he did, but he was also having a very bad year with the Washington Nationals before they cut him. What did you make of the Rosario signing, and kind of what do you see the Braves doing here coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, this was the most obvious. Everybody could see that as soon as he was released from Washington. I mean, Sean and I gave our kind of pre-thoughts on him signing just because it just felt like such an obvious thing. And listen, Marcel Eddie Rosario has not been good this year. Like he hasn't. He has been, obviously he just got cut by the Nationals, and the Nationals are not a great team. So he's not been good. But not being good is not actually a immediate disqualifier for a spot on the Braves team right now, especially a spot in the Braves outfield, because the Braves are already rostering some guys that are not good. So I'm fine with. I don't really care. I mean, that's what I said that's what I told Sean a couple of days ago. I don't really care. Like, I don't really want Eddie Rosario taking big at bats, but I also don't want Forrest Wall taking big at bats, and that's already happening. So yeah, what the hell? I mean, I give it a shot. I mean, there's no downside here. I mean, if he sucks, you cut him and you move on. But we know Eddie pretty well. We know that like he has these insane hot streaks in him that he can literally carry an offense for like three or 4 weeks if you catch him at the right time. Now, if you catch him at the wrong time, it's like watching a high school hitter hit. So, maybe you get lucky. I'm with you. I do think they might call him up pretty soon just to get another lefty in for the trip. He actually hits pretty well in Arizona. I actually just randomly kind of looked that up. He had a great, I don't know if you remember last year, a grand slam in the ninth inning against Arizona to
Oh
win a
yeah.
game.
Yeah, it was one of the
Uh,
best moments of the season.
Probably, yeah, one of the highlights of the season last year was him, and he had an unbelievable series in that whole series. He was awesome. So I'm with you. I would not be surprised at all if they called him up for the series. But well, it's whatever. I mean, the outfield, some of the options they're running out are so bad that, yeah, give it. I mean, Eddie's probably as good as any of them, and he can certainly get as hot as any of them. So go for it. I'd be fine with it.
Yeah, I think the obvious move the Braves could make on Monday, and maybe this will be dated by the time folks listen, but Ramon Laureano has missed, I believe, more than a week at this point with what was first called a back injury and then an oblique injury. And the Braves have not put him on the injured list. Now, candidly, they don't really have a ton of great options in Gwinnett because Brian Anderson is still rehabbing. So there's just what are you going to do, right? I mean, it was kind of like the Austin Riley injury a month or two ago, where they just didn't have a great option to replace him. So I do think the Braves could move Laureano to the injured list. Maybe they backdate it by the 3 days and then call Eddie up because the Braves are projected to see 7 right-handed starting pitchers this upcoming week in Arizona and San Diego. And while nobody, or I don't think reasonably nobody, should expect Eddie to be the savior of the outfield or to immediately transition into 2021 NLCS Eddie Rosario, he is obviously an accomplished big leaguer. You said we have seen his hot streaks and what he can do. And just frankly, the bar of being better than Eli White or Forrest Wall is so low that it kind of feels like a no lose proposition.
Exactly. There's no risk. Like you're not taking away at bats from somebody that like, desperately needs them. I'm fine with I would actually probably encourage it. I do think I've said before, I think the Braves need more left-handed hitting. Um, if you look at their splits for the year, left-handed versus right-handed, they hit left-handed pitching substantially better than they hit right-handed pitching, which is not a surprise because they have so many right-handed hitters. And even a guy like Ozzy, who's a switch hitter, is so much better as a right-handed hitter. So I'm all for them adding some left-handed pop. We'll get to this probably either later in this show or down the line a bit. I would hope that they would actually go out and add a significant piece at some point in the outfield. But in terms of right now, what's available, what you can do, yeah, I have no problem with them adding Eddie and seeing if they can strike, get lightning in a bottle for a few weeks before they can make a more serious move.
All right, Stephen, continuing our discussion on the outfield, some encouraging news this past week with Michael Harris. Harris has continued to work out over the last couple of days. He was seen running in the outfield, which is a big step for a hamstring injury. And it seems like pretty soon here, the Braves are going to send Michael Harris out on a rehab assignment. And assuming all goes well, it seems like the Braves are going to get their center fielder back probably just after the All-Star game. And obviously, that is a huge boost to this team.
But yeah, I mean, he's a left-handed hitter, first of all, like we were just talking about. He helps balance out the lineup more. Obviously defensively, it's a big deal. Although I do think Kelnick has done substantially better than what I thought he would do as a center fielder. I wasn't thrilled about that, honestly, but the Braves just didn't have anything better. But he's played a pretty decent center field. I haven't actually looked at the numbers to see what the metrics say, but just from the eye test, I think Kelnick's done pretty well out there. But getting Michael back, getting another lefty, just getting another outfielder on the roster, I mean, it would just be huge. Like we need fewer at bats from some of the guys that we've seen in the last month or so. So getting your starting center fielder back. Michael wasn't having the best year, if we're being honest. Before he got hurt, he was actually having his worst year offensively. But you hope, with some time off and maybe he comes back, he just kind of gets a fresh start on the season and gets back to being the guy that we saw the last couple of years. But just on pure talent, like you would just always rather Michael Harris take that at bat versus, Eli White or
Anybody
Forrest
else?
Wall, anybody else on, a triple A outfielder essentially is what the Braves are running out every day these days. So yeah, Michael Harris, Eddie Rosario, any sort of left-handed outfield help, I'm all about. And obviously Michael helps tremendously defensively, pushes Kelnick back to a corner, which helps you there because he's a really good corner defender. It just has a domino effect, and it's a big deal. So yeah, getting him back is a first step of adding a little bit more talent to this team.
Well, and it should help lengthen the lineup as well. because right now, I mean, we watch it every single night. If it gets to the sixth or seventh hitter in the order, if there's a rally going, you can kind of forget about it. I know that a couple of those bottom parts of the lineup guys had a good game on Sunday, but it has been brutal to watch. And the way that Kelnick has played in the leadoff spot, I mean, he's been unbelievable in that first spot in the order. So presumably you're going to have Michael Harris hit fifth, sixth, seventh. Curious to see where Brian Snitker hits him. And I think that's where Michael Harris is better suited with his heavy swing rate, his low OBP, his low walk rate. I really don't love Michael in that leadoff spot. And sometimes he has to play there just because there was nobody else before Kelnick emerged. But it does sound like the Braves are going to get Michael Harris back maybe within 2 weeks from now, and that'll be a real big boost. On the pitching side, Steven, I am knocking on every piece of wood around me, but it seems like the Braves might have some decent pitching depth for the second half of the season. Let's talk about Ian Anderson first. Ian made his third rehab appearance over the weekend, pitched pretty well by all accounts through 3 1/3 innings before rain came, although he was already at 47 pitches. So it was probably going to be a last batter or two for him. But, so far, so good for Ian. I think it's fair to have muted expectations until we see him do it at the higher levels of the minor leagues. And of course, in the majors, if that time ever comes. But it's at least encouraging that Ian has been able to make 3 rehab appearances so far and seems to be healthy after the Tommy John.
There's no such thing as too much pitching depth. I don't, like you, I don't have the highest expectations for Ian, not just because he's coming back from a serious injury and might take a while to get going, but I mean, he was demoted before he got hurt. Like he was pitching in AAA when he got hurt because he wasn't pitching well enough to be in the majors. So, what kind of guy do we see? How does the velocity look? One problem he's always had is, the fastball was like 95, 96, and the changeup was like 80, 89, 90. Like he had a really hard time getting a big separation in his 2 best pitches. And so, how does that look? The curveball, just general health. He's obviously got a lot of pedigree. He's been pitched in a World Series. He's thrown a lot of big innings for the Braves, but yeah, my expectations are pretty muted here. If he gets back, I actually wonder if he might be like some trade bait. If he has a really good rehab, pitches well in the minors, I wonder, obviously at that time we're going to be getting close to the deadline. I do wonder if maybe, he gets put in a deal somewhere, but yeah, it'll be interesting. You can't have too much, right? You can't have too much pitching depth. If he gets back, it's only helpful either as actual depth for the team or as a trade piece, however the Braves want to use him, but it's always helpful.
And another encouraging bit of news on the pitching front is AJ Smith-Shawver, who I think we're all pretty bullish on, especially the way he has developed maybe over the last calendar year, is going to make his second rehab start with Gwinnett on Tuesday of this upcoming week. And it was a limited sample this year, but I think AJ Smith-Shawver right now is a potential impact piece for the rotation at some point. Of course, it remains to be seen if a rotation spot ever opens up, but it is going to be good to have AJ Smith-Shawver available should the Braves need him in the second half.
Yeah, that was a bummer. He pitched really well. He came up and basically got 1 start and then, got hurt. I think it was the Chicago start, if I remember correctly. And then pulled an oblique. And, of course, we know with Sean Murphy, and it's even worse for pitchers just because of how much torque they put on that oblique when they pitch. And so, yeah, it'd be, he's a guy I'm fairly confident will not be trade bait. He is a guy that will actually, I think, be legitimate starting rotation depth. If they have another guy go down, right now the rotation has stabilized a bit. We're going to talk about that a little more when we get to the Schwellenbeck start this weekend against the Phillies. But the rotation has stabilized a pretty good bit. The Braves don't technically have a spot available in the rotation at the moment, but you can never have too much. And AJ Smith-Shawver is a real legitimate, like, I can start in the majors right now. Once he gets healthy, like he's at that level of his development where he could actually impact major league games as soon as he's healthy. So,
yeah,
that's the best type of pitching depth, is the type that can actually come up and be an impact starter for you right away. And that's what AJ is. So that's a really big one. If they can get him back, for the stretch run for August, September, in case somebody else goes down. If they want to do the 6-man rotation to try to keep guys fresh like they were, he's another guy for that. Like that's a big one. If it, that's one to watch for sure is getting him back and healthy and seeing how he progresses and hopefully back up to the majors as soon as they need him.
I think that's kind of an underrated storyline for the Braves in the second half is, do they go to a 6-man rotation at some point if they can? And I said a moment ago that I'm knocking on every piece of wood, but right now I think you have to feel pretty good about the 5 in the rotation, potentially have Smith Shawver back in a couple of weeks. Bryce Elder has been fine overall, maybe Ian Anderson. And of course, Alex Anthopoulos could always go out and add a starter at the deadline. Although I'm thinking that outfield and maybe shortstop are probably going to be his priority. And it might be tough. There's just not a ton of depth in the farm system right now to swing 3 or 4 high impact trades while not just completely nuking your chances at a productive farm system in the years to come. So we will see on that. Stephen, we are now going to jump into the Philly series, which, as we kind of teased off the top, thank goodness they won on Saturday and Sunday. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. All right, Stephen, we are going to get the one blemish from the weekend out of the way, and that was Friday night. A very frustrating loss, 8-6. The offense actually came to life quite a bit against Aaron Nola and the Philadelphia bullpen, but Max Fried turned in arguably his worst start since those first 2 of the season. And there was just some bad pitching management as well from Brian Snitker. And I know a lot of folks had opinions on this on Friday night, and we at least wanted to hit on them.
Coming off the Giants series where the offense just disappeared, they lost 2 out of 3 versus the Giants. I don't think they scored more than 3 runs in any of the games. The vibes weren't great coming into the Friday night's game, and then Max Fried has, probably one of his 2 or 3 worst starts of the year. If we're being honest, he had base runners everywhere all night long. The defense didn't play well at all. The bullpen had a rough night. Brian Snitker had a rough night, if we're being honest, in terms of decisions. The offense was kind of the one part of the team that showed up in that game, ironically enough. But yeah, that was in terms of like vibes. After that game, we're the losing that game and falling another behind Philly, and at that point, obviously, we didn't know that they were going to win the next 2, but at that point, the vibes were low. And you and I think we were either texting or DMing about like how the show was going to go had they not, if they continued to play like that all weekend and got swept or lost 2 out of 3, the show was going to be a much different tenor. But luckily that was the low point of the weekend was Friday night, and everything after that was much better. But yeah, a rough game for Max. We can talk about the decision on letting him, pitch. Listen, it's never a good idea to let a pitcher throw to a lineup for the 4th time. Like that's just never a good idea. In general, you can just make a blanket statement. It's never good. But when a guy is facing the top of the lineup for a 4th time in the 6th inning, that means he's allowed about 1 million base runners. Like that's the only way you get to the top of the lineup in the 6th inning is if you've allowed 1 million base runners. And to let Max continue to pitch to the top of the, when he gave up 3 runs to the top of the lineup the 3rd time he faced him, Turner had already hit a home run off him. That was brutal. That was one of the most frustrating. I typically think Snit catches too much crap on Twitter and online just because he gets blamed for everything. That was one that was legitimately like unbelievably dumb. Like you just can't let a guy lose the game because he's facing the top of the lineup a 4th time in the 6th inning. He'd already given up like 12 base runners. He was not on at all. The game was still manageable. Like it was still a winnable game. This is obviously the team ahead of you in the division. It was just brutal. And yeah. I know everybody had opinions on it, but yeah, that was not a good decision by Snit. I think everybody kind of agrees with that at this point. But again, luckily that was the low point of the weekend. It picked up from there. That was not a fun night though. The vibes were at an all-time low after that.
Yeah, and thank goodness the Braves won on Saturday and Sunday, because this would have been a very, very different toned podcast, as you noted. The difference, at least just from a quick glance at the standings, the Braves are now 8 games back in the East and 7 back in the loss column. The difference between being 8 back and 10 back, at least to me, feels huge. And obviously it's only 2 games, but to be able to win on Saturday and Sunday after a frustrating game on Friday night was great to see. The one kind of constant throughout the weekend was the offense was quite good. And there were a lot of home runs on Friday. Both Austin Riley had a 2-run homer and Marcell Ozuna had a 3-run homer. And that was a really good sign for Ozuna because he had been in a pretty bad funk for a couple of weeks. It was great to see him homer on Friday. And then on Saturday, there was a lot of early offense again, which was really encouraging. And they got to Ranger Suarez, which is much easier said than done. Suarez has been one of the better pitchers in the National League this year, and the Braves kind of ambushed him. A leadoff Jared Kelenic ground rule double, then Ozzie Albies came around to score him, and then Marcell hit another home run to make it 3-0 early. And it just kind of felt like it took the edge off after a couple of really frustrating losses for the Braves. An impressive showing early on from the Braves to not only get to Suarez early, but then another home run from Ozzie Albies made it 5-1 in the fifth to effectively end it.
And Suarez has kicked their butt the last couple of years, especially in the postseason. Like they had not been able to do anything off Suarez, which is unusual for this team because they hit left-handed pitching so well. That just tells you how good Suarez has pitched against them, that a lefty has shut them down the way he has. And now, listen, on paper, that was the worst matchup of the weekend, right? Suarez versus your rookie. Suarez at the time had one of the best ERAs in baseball. Schwellenbeck had an ERA in the fives, obviously a rookie pitcher. I will say this, Scott, if the Braves go on to really take off from here and maybe even run down the Phillies, I think that game that Schwellenbach pitched, going 6 innings, giving up 1 run, the offense coming out and jumping on Suarez, that might be the most pivotal game of the year, given where the momentum was going after Friday night's game, after San Francisco, after the Giants series. Like the vibes, like I said, were at an all-time low. It just felt like this was just going to be another series where the offense no-shows, where the Braves lose it, where Suarez had dominated the lineup and Schwellenbach had struggled, kind of like you expected to happen, and the Braves had lost that game. It's just a whole different vibe. But Schwellenbach going out and throwing 6, 1-run, he had very little trouble throwing, I think he gave up 1 run in 6 innings. One of the biggest starts of the year. And like you said, the offense came along. They still had some frustrating moments. They could have jumped on Suarez even more. They had second and third, nobody out in the second inning and couldn't get any runs home. But the home run ball came back. Ozzie hit a homer. Marcell hit a homer. And Schwellenbach really shoved. And then the back of the bullpen threw a perfect game for the rest of the night. But yeah, huge. Yeah. Honestly, maybe the biggest game of the year in terms of switching momentum from where it was going to where it ended up at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, that's a good call, and I'm inclined to agree. A loss on Saturday would have meant an automatic series loss, and then you're facing a possible sweep on Sunday. That would have been scary hours for the Braves, and then you start to worry about the season as a whole. Stephen, I know on the show we have talked about Schwellenbach quite a bit, and I am about as bullish as you can be on him. I feel like I am one of the proud founding members of the Spencer Schwellenbach fan club. It was his best start of the season. And not only that, man, but he navigated the lineup a third time through, worked 6 innings, only singles. He gave up 7 hits, but they were all singles, 7 strikeouts, no walks, which is really encouraging, and only needed 81 pitches to get through those 6 innings. In the last 5 starts, Schwellenbach has a 3.86 ERA, but a 2.99 FIP, 29 strikeouts to only 6 walks, and a 675 OPS against him. I'm a big fan of Schwellenbach. I think you are too, based on your tweets, but just kind of what do you think of this kid moving forward?
Peripherals look great. I know the ERA is still high. He's dealt with a little bit of bad luck on the BABIP stuff. The Phillies game was a great example. He didn't give up anything hard, but a lot of times, these little squeakers find holes. He gives up singles. I think he's got like a 330 or 340 BABIP against. I looked it up after the game. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's something like that. It's unlucky. But yeah, he's got a 350 FIP, 360 xFIP. He's got more than a strikeout per inning, which is a huge benchmark, especially for a guy who I didn't expect to be a big strikeout guy. To to be at over a strikeout per inning pitched is a big deal in the major leagues. He's not walking people. Honestly, I think sometimes he throws too many strikes. Like I think sometimes he gets ahead in a count 0-2 and the pitch is too good of a pitch. I think at one point in the game on Saturday, he threw like 25 or 27 straight pitches or that were strikes or something crazy like that. Like he's in the zone, which is why Brian Snitker loves him. Any pitcher, any young pitcher that comes up and doesn't walk people, it's going to immediately be a fan favorite in the manager's room. But yeah, I mean, he's really stabilized that fifth starter spot, which was just a disaster for most of the year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like just an absolute, like an abject disaster for
It,
3 months.
it is night and day watching Schwellenbach compared to Darius Vines or Alan Winans or even the couple of disastrous starts from Hurston Waldrop, isn't it?
Yeah, like just the confidence level is much higher. You feel like you don't feel like you're watching a rookie, which I guess is the best compliment I could give him. Like you feel like you're watching somebody that's done it a little bit longer. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't get rattled. He's never, he never has these weird bouts of command issues that so many rookies deal with. So yeah, I've been really impressed. I do think the ERA will come down to match the peripherals at some point. Now he's a rookie. We need to manage expectations. Of course, I want to put on my Brad Rowland cap here and make sure we manage expectations because I feel like that's what he would say. But yeah, I've been really impressed and could not come at a better time. The Braves desperately needed somebody to take that spot and solidify it and stabilize it, and that's exactly what he's done.
Yeah, really nice job from Schwellenbach on Saturday when the team really needed him. And then Sunday was probably one of the more enjoyable wins of the whole season. A 6-0 win over Philly. It was the first time in like 7 or 8 years the Braves had shut out Philadelphia in the regular season, which kind of caught me by surprise. And I think probably the biggest takeaway is that Ronaldo Lopez looked very much more like the guy that we enjoyed so much the first couple of months of the year. Not that he had been bad in his last couple starts, but he had gotten up there with his walks. His command had gotten away, just wasn't throwing a lot of strikes, and had only worked, I think, 8 1/3 innings in his last 2 starts combined. So for Ronaldo to go out there, 6 innings, only 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. His ERA on the season is 1.71, which is just ridiculous as we kind of near the midway point in July.
Yeah, that was a fun game. Just like you said, it was just easy. Like the Braves just haven't had a lot of easy games where they jump out early. The pitching dominates. There's a 5, 6 run lead on the board, and you're not sweating like every rally that comes up. Yeah, it was good to see Ronaldo. He'd had those back-to-back 4 walk games. With him, you're always kind of that. There's always that thing in the back of your mind, like, okay, is he? At some point he's gonna hit a wall. Like he hasn't been a starter for 3 years. Surely he can't do this all year. There's always that kind of thing. And so when you see a couple of starts that aren't great, you kind of wonder, okay, are we getting that? So yeah, for him to come out two hits all game. He did have 3 walks. He's still fighting his command a little bit, but it was much better than it was the last 2 starts. He's going to get some, obviously he'll make one more start this week and then the All-Star break. I'm really hoping listen, I love when Braves players make the All-Star game. I would love it if neither Sale nor Lopez actually threw a pitch in the game. Like I would much rather these guys get rest, get to be off their feet. I'm sure it won't happen. I'm sure both guys will end up pitching in the game, but yeah, just I would love Ronaldo to get more rest. I'm constantly worried about the workload just because of how many years he's been a reliever. But yeah, it was good to see, and it was good to see the offense, 4 homers. The bottom of the lineup contributed. Like like you said, it was a comfortable, easy, kind of stress-free win, and those have been hard to find this first half.
Yeah, really a great game from start to finish. You mentioned Kelnick had a homer, Olson, Adam Duvall hit his first home run of the year off a righty, which was a good sign. No,
That's
Duvall's,
crazy.
yeah,
That's crazy.
he's had a pretty good last couple of days and a week or two even. That's great to see for Adam, a guy who clearly cares, even if the results have been pretty bad. Eli White homered, which was kind of a whoa, what happened there? So overall, just a really good vibes game on Sunday, especially heading out to the West Coast this upcoming week against 2 pretty good teams. So the Braves are going to now play 4 against the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks are 500, And then they will play 3 in San Diego against a surging San Diego Padres team that I believe is the third wild card as of this moment. Steven, the Diamondbacks have had an interesting season. Of course, coming off the World Series run, they have hovered around 500 most of the year. They won a couple of games this weekend, so now they are exactly 500. An interesting team, and I'm curious to hear your take on Arizona.
Yeah, it's always a weird team because they do have talent. They had talent last year, but they go through these stretches of just really bad play, and then they'll stabilize, and then they'll go stretch. It's I guess it's a bit like you would expect with a younger team. Corbin Carroll has not had the year that he wanted in terms of a sophomore year. It's probably a pretty classic sophomore slump. I think he hit a home run today, but it's only like his third one of the year. Christian Walker is a monster. He got snubbed on the All-Star game for not being in, there's just too many good first basemen because of Freddie Freeman and Bryce Harper, but he should have been an All-Star. He's a monster. He just destroyed the Dodgers a couple of series ago, and they are playing better. Like I think they've won 3 series in a row. The Braves do catch a little bit of a break. They are going to see a couple of lesser known starters. They do get Zach Gallen in one of the games, but the other two are pretty favorable in terms of the matchups. The Braves have played pretty well in Arizona. Actually, the last couple of years, they've kind of kicked off these big winning streaks and big stretches of really good play in Arizona. Like we talked about earlier, Rosario hit that grand slam off in Arizona last year to kick off kind of a long winning streak. And there are some good memories. Austin Riley, if I remember correctly, destroys Arizona pitching in that park. If you play daily fantasy or whatever, I would maybe load up on Austin Riley because he typically mashes in that park. So it'll be fun. It'll be a fun series. I know you're going to a couple of games. It's usually pretty high scoring in that park. It's just a hitter friendly park. But it's a big series because, like you said, Arizona is playing well. The division has gotten, or the wild card race has gotten a little tighter because the Braves have gone through a little bit of a swoon here the last few weeks. And, San Diego's playing better. Arizona's playing better. The Mets are playing better. The Cardinals are playing better. Like, the mediocre National League has been a little less mediocre lately. And so, these are big games. Like, these games matter. It always matters in terms of head to head for tiebreaker stuff. Anytime you're talking about teams that might be there at the end with you, any kind of tiebreaker scenario matters quite a bit. So yeah, big games. It'll be a fun series. The Braves do have some pitching advantages, I would say, in the series, but in that park, it might not matter. That park can get crazy. You can have a lot of high scoring games, but it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I am too. You mentioned the pitching matchups. Man, I'm a baseball fan. 2 of these guys I admittedly have never heard of. Yilber Diaz is going to start for Arizona on Monday night. He is making his major league debut. So inevitably, like 7 scoreless innings are probably coming because the Braves cannot seemingly hit rookies whenever they are fresh up from the minors. They will see Zach Gallen on Tuesday, who is very, very good. It'll be Monday is Yilber Diaz against Sale. Tuesday is Zach Gallen against Charlie Morton. Wednesday is another name I have never heard of, Slade Cacconi. I don't know, Stephen. I should have done my pronunciation guide prep before this show. He will go off against Max Fried. And then Thursday is Brandon Pfaadt, who was a postseason hero for Arizona last year, against Spencer Schwellenbach. And I think you said it exactly. The Braves have a chance to take advantage of these pitching matchups. Now, Arizona's lineup is pretty solid. Maybe not great, but they do have some guys slugging. Old friend Christian Walker is out of his mind. Ketel Marte is, for my money, maybe the most underrated player in Major League Baseball. I know he was just voted an all-star, but just nationally, Ketel does not get enough credit for being very good. And let's hope that as the Braves play their final week before the All-Star break, that they can build on this Philly series and have a strong week overall against 2 pretty good opponents. It'd be nice to go into the All-Star break on a winning note.
Marte missed the last 3 or 4 games, but I just saw a note from one of their beat writers that the manager is pretty confident that he's going to play in the Atlanta series. So I think he's coming back. So, and I agree with you. I think he's one of the most underrated players in baseball. He's a fantastic player. But yeah, it's a 7 game week all on the West Coast. Those are tough. Like, I don't know. Brad's better about the odds stuff, like where the Braves sit in terms of odds. I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like anything in the positive, like a 4-3 week, I would probably take on the West Coast.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think you have to be happy with anything. Yeah, 4-3. Anything better than that, I was obviously, I think gravy. 3-4, you'd feel obviously less good about that, but West Coast trips are West Coast trips. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they play coming off kind of a big series, two big wins against Philly. I think the offense might be able to keep it going in Arizona, which would be huge. So yeah, we'll see, but it'll be a fun week.
It will be a fun week indeed. We will, of course, have quite a bit of content on the podcast network in the coming days. I believe Stephen and our good pal Sean Coleman will be back for a show probably Tuesday night. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. Of course, any kind of breaking news that might happen, we are kind of quietly but surely getting into trade deadline season. And who knows, maybe we'll have something on the horizon. Stephen, it was great to do one of these with you, my friend. Appreciate you pinch hitting for Brad on this Sunday evening. Tell the good folks where they can find your work.
Yeah, B_outliers is the Twitter handle. Obviously here at Hammer Territory, we appreciate all the support we've gotten since we've moved over. Scott and I and Sean still all right at Battery Power. If you want to go check out the site, Chris does an incredible job there. But yeah, we just appreciate it. We appreciate all the support. It's been unbelievable. And yeah, well, now we're going to get to the All-Star break, and then, starts the second half and trade season and the draft, pennant races and all that stuff. And we'll be here to cover it all. So it'll be fun.
I would echo everything that Stephen just said. Again, a big thank you to everyone checking out the show. Please subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. I am Scott Coleman. We will be back with a new show soon. Have a good night, everybody. We will see you all next time.